Welcome to the No Script Show, where if you're still walking, you're doing a lot better than Conor McGregor. That's
Facts.
Yeah, let's start with that, since that's what half of the internet is talking about, and that's what we were just talking about, and human violence. So let's get into that. I have no words for how bad this leg break is. Like, it is just the most brutal thing I've seen.
It's nearly cartoonish.
Like
in the cartoons where the guy's arm would make like a physical loop at the bottom where it was broken, it almost looks like that.
He seems to try to still walk it off. Like, it's just adrenaline is one hell of a drug. That's what I'm gonna say.
It keeps you going through a fair amount.
Adrenaline is one hell of a drug. Just looking at it makes me cringe. It is the most. I just Googled Conor McGregor leg break. I'm actually just gonna retweet one of the pictures of it. It's just, that is cartoonish. But anyway, as you were saying, about sanctioned violence in gladiatorial games. Yeah, what were you saying?
Yeah, I mean it's fairly recent that we've had the level of civilization, well, quote unquote civilization that we're enjoying now. It's a fairly new phenomenon. Every sphere of society, with its fights or just the general dealings with each other, it's the level of civility that we have is a very new thing.
I mean, what were you saying? It was when the London Tube was still operational, when they had public executions.
Yeah, people used to take the London Tube to go and watch public executions. France had cat burnings, and that was like a form of public entertainment. They would grab a bunch of cats, put them in a net, put them on a fire pile, and just set them alight, and that was the entertainment for the day.
That is,
yeah. But it is the French. So yeah, you kind of expect that from them.
Hey! We leave the French alone here. I'm an unabashed Francophile, so.
Dude, the last decent Frenchman was Napoleon. Come on.
I don't know. Some of the French generals in the First World War were pretty decent oaks.
Right up until they raised their national white flag.
I said World War I, not World War II. But that's always my funniest thing, because it's proof of you're only as good as your last performance. Because in terms of absolute numbers, the French basically have the best war record of any military in continental Europe. Like, if you actually look at French military history, but because of one little incident like 70 years ago, everybody thinks they're trash. Like, no, the French are pretty damn good at their war.
If I remember correctly, you have to go back all the way to like the Romans to find a European country that did better long term than the French did. They dominated stuff for a long time. But like I said, the last decent guy they had was basically Napoleon. After that, they had one or two guys that sort of did good, but not really on that scale again.
I'm looking for the quote that there's. Hold on, Jamie, pull that shit up. I want to find, because it was Rudyard Kipling who said something about I think it was Rudyard Kipling. Yeah, because I'm looking for it, because he said something about the French's business is war. That's like their business. They do their business is war, and they do their business. That's it. That's the quote about the French.
Yeah, I mean, they dominated Europe and large swaths of the globe for a long time.
Somebody's like, when I was in Vietnam, there were several former ARVN and Montagnard soldiers that were working in hangars that fought with the French. In their words, they were some of the bravest men they ever saw. So the French. I mean, look again. The French's business is war, and they do their business. Unfortunately, for most people who have very little understanding of military history, Uh, they just believe the whole surrender monkey meme.
Yeah, well, and it's mainly because of the Second World War. But I mean, yeah, the force that they were up against in the Second World War was no Mickey Mouse crew rolling up their streets. It was a serious assault.
Yeah, I mean they just happened to be the very first people to have to sort of go up against this new form of warfare. Nobody else had ever. Honestly, had it been any other military in the same position as the French, I don't think anyone would have done much better. Nobody had seen this form of warfare before, ever.
Yeah. I mean, because I don't think there was any country in Europe that could have faced that onslaught and actually won it, the initial push, not even Britain.
Yeah. I mean, because remember, at the end of the First World War, the prevailing military wisdom was, okay, all these massive networks of static defenses, all these ways of moving infantry around, all this. And then the Germans roll up and they're like, yeah, that's cute, except none of that is effective against this new form of warfare.
Yeah, I mean, most of the European countries still had very much the lessons they learned in the First World War. That's the modus operandi that they went into the Second World War with.
Exactly.
And the Germans didn't have that luxury because with the Treaty of Versailles, they didn't have the capital to finance those kind of operations. So they had to think outside of the box. So
they thought very far outside of the box. Yeah.
In the box. I mean, there's stories of after the First World War, because Germans were not allowed to fly powered aircraft. It was part of the Treaty of Versailles. So to train up pilots, they actually trained with gliders. That's why still today, some of your best gliders that you can buy is German gliders, because they developed the gliders to practice. So the pilots train in gliders, and then eventually they just, okay, we've got airplanes now, you get in an airplane and go and fly. So that's to come up with all sorts of maneuvers to come around the limitations that were placed on them after the First World War.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they really those limitations, but then like after the Second War, didn't they limit how many tanks Germany can have after the Second World War or something like that?
They're very limited on their. Why do you think America still has a big military base in Germany?
I mean, at this point, I'm kind of like, do you really think that the Germans are going to be doing anything wild and out anytime soon?
Oh, well, they're running Europe.
Well,
they managed to take control of the whole Europe.
Yeah, but this time they've done it in a much more benevolent way. So I think it's time to pull out of that base, guys.
Now that we mention it, it's actually, if you think about it, all the countries that have gone on big conquests, they've done it in that fashion. I mean, the Germans effectively took control of most of Europe without even using force. The Chinese has taken control of a large swath of Eurasia and Africa and a whole bunch of small islands in the Pacific without any violence.
Yeah, it's the new
diplomatic
warfare. It's the new mode of conquest.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
Yes, but it's frustrating as all hell.
Why so? Why is it frustrating?
Well, because imagine this: if you are sitting in a country effectively run by the Germans or the Chinese, you can't go and enlist in the military to go and fight the Axis powers. You just have to sit there and take it, locked up in your house because your government's scared of a virus.
That's true. Speaking of which, how's it going that side?
Oh no, it's lovely here, Odin. We've got riots in the streets, highways blocked off, and you can't even buy booze to make yourself feel better.
Wow.
Yeah, dude.
That's going well.
Durban is an absolute mess. Earlier today, basically.
Was that the fault of lockdowns or the fault of straight up factionalism?
No, dude, I think it's just a bunch of. It's like I don't know if I've been saying this for a long time. Your biggest indicator that there's a chance of instability in a country is if you have a large population, a large group of military-age males who are unemployed and impoverished. And South Africa has that in spades full. So you see it in KwaZulu-Natal. I mean, they're rioting over Zuma's incarceration, apparently, but they just randomly, they're blocking off highways, shooting at cars, stoning cars, looting shops, setting stuff alight. It's just barbarism, basically. They're just rioting.
So, okay. So for those of you who aren't in the know, our former president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, who is, I mean, honestly, on some level, I kind of respect his hustle. On some level, like in a very fucked up way.
Yeah, you had that Mario Antoinette let them eat cake type of vibe about him.
Yeah, like low key, I kind of respect his hustle. Low key. So our former president has finally gone to jail for one of the myriad of charges against him. Or is he? Wait, is he now? So he has actually.
Yeah, he got a 15-month sentence.
Okay.
Because he for contempt of court, because he didn't. We've got this bottomless money pit we call the Zondo Commission, which is supposed to look into the corruption and state capture, quote unquote. So he refused to appear in front of the commission, and then they went to the constitutional court, and they said, okay, you are in contempt of court. You have to appear in front of the commission, or you are in contempt of court. So that's why he went to jail, not for all the corruption allegations, all of that. It's because he didn't want to appear in front of the commission. And then he filed for a stay on the arrest warrant,
right.
And that he was supposed to go in like the Sunday evening. He didn't go, and he said, oh no, but you thought because he's appealing it, he doesn't have to go to jail. So then he eventually went to jail, and now they're rioting because he's incarcerated. But yeah, basically Natal is a mess. Durban, they've blocked most of the roads in and out of Durban is blocked. It started up now up here in Gauteng, Joburg, Alexandra, all those places. They're rioting, looting, burning stuff down, blocking roads. Lots of fun.
Okay, so yes, our former president, and you may be wondering why this specific province, and this comes down for our handful of international listeners, down to the fact that South Africa is not actually a nation. There's a hell of a lot of sub-nations, let's say, within South Africa, and KwaZulu-Natal is basically Zulu country, and Jacob Zuma is basically a Zulu folk hero, and when this happened, a large percentage or large majority of the Zulu people in South Africa said, fuck reason, fuck the fact that he's actually done anything wrong. You can't do anything to our folk hero. We're gonna wilding out now. And that's what they've done. They're now rioting, they are burning, they are looting, which is great because they're basically fucking their own economy. And I'm now seeing KZN shut down, and they're like, the time is now to break off from South Africa. And quite frankly, I'm just like, no, stop, don't go, like, please.
I feel the same way about the Cape.
Yeah, I feel the same. No, stop, don't go, no.
But did you see our favorite meme machine also got arrested?
Who?
Oh, Cole Niehause.
Really? For what?
Because the initial protest in front of the Zuma's little village, in Kandla village, was organized by Cole Niehause. And he was actually busy giving an interview, a live interview to one of the SABC or ETV crews, which is one of our local television stations. Anyways, busy giving a live interview, and the cops arrest him on live television. It was the funniest thing ever.
Holy shit!
He was so busy. He was in the middle of berating one of the because the reporter was asking about asking me if this isn't a big risk for coronavirus spread and all of that, and he was busy berating the reporter because he's paying attention to trivial matters and letting law and order go to waste and blah blah blah. And then the cops surround him and just arrest him and take him off to jail for breaking the state of emergency regulations.
Arrested him on live TV. Oh my god, yes, that's amazing.
His camouflage didn't help him.
Was he wearing the camo?
He's always wearing the camo, dude. I mean, it's called Niehause.
I'm actually sad I missed that now. I'm actually sad I missed that. Oh wow, that's amazing. Actually arrested him on live TV. That's amazing. Okay, so Jay-Z and Niehause are spending some time in the slammer. Um, Quite frankly, okay, so here's my take on it. Obviously, this dude is guilty as sin, Zuma. And there are some people, I am in the camp of people who says 15 months, and he won't spend 15 months. I'll be surprised if he spends like 3 months in any sort of serious imprisonment. 15 months, 15 million years isn't enough for the level of unnecessary poverty, suffering, and death that was facilitated by this man's greed and corruption through all the things he did in his tenure as president. And on top of that, I would also say that even if he got 15 million years, it still changes not enough, because he is just a symptom of the ANC as a whole. They all deserve the deeper circle of hell for the greed, poverty, and corruption that they have facilitated, and the suffering that's come of that. So
Yeah,
it's
totally
a
agree.
very hollow victory to me. I know some people are dancing in the streets like, yeah, see, the courts work. I'm like, no.
See, the thing is, like I said at the beginning of this whole Jacob Zuma debacle, is I'll start paying attention to the ANC's noises they make against corruption when they start putting people of the ANC on trial for treason. Because if you go and look at the definition, Jacob Zuma needs to go up for treason, and him and a lot of his fellow compadres needs to go up for treason, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, they sold their country down the river for a couple of bucks. And it's like the Cubans are also in the news again, because they want to bring in Cuban engineers to fix the water problems in some areas. They want to bring in they brought in Cuban teachers. No one knows why, and the Cuban doctors are still floating around somewhere. No one has seen them. They're MIA. It's ridiculous. But it's all theater.
Yeah, I saw somebody, I think it was Sideliner Opinions. By the way, whoever Sideliner Opinions is, they're like the fairy godmother of South African podcasts, because they comment on every single episode, every stream, every episode. Like Sideliner, whoever you are, like you clearly like very dedicated to this. But thank you. Anyway, somebody said something to the effect of the nuclear deal with Russia and the arms deal and these Cuban deals are all just money washing and paying them back for the aid that all those countries provided the ANC during the struggle. And like that actually kind of makes sense.
It's all money laundering. But it's the same thing they did with Zimbabwe as well. That's why Zimbabwe gets the fuel cheap, and Botswana gets fuel cheap from South Africa, and gets all these sweetheart deals. It's payback for services rendered. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But I see Zimbabwe is also stepping up their game. They're now they're gonna now pass additional legislation and start enforcing standing legislation to push out all foreigners that has businesses in Zimbabwe. So everything from small shops, roughly the same thing Botswana did, but just a bit more aggressive and a bit more broad. So they're pushing out. There's hardly any industry left in that country, but now they still want to push out foreigners that own businesses in Zimbabwe.
I was going to say, can a Zimbabwe afford to do that? Because Botswana can do that.
Yeah. But now in the same breath, and the Zimbabwean government also says, okay, but they're going to welcome in Chinese investment. So I don't know how they get two from that 1 + 1 equation of theirs, but yeah, okay. They're going to kick out the foreigners to bring in other foreigners effectively. I don't know how they think that's going to work out for them.
Chinese bridge and rail, let's go. World War III in Africa, let's go, boys.
Yeah.
Let's step back for a second. I just want to address it, because we kind of have to discuss this. So that's how the whole COVID lockdown thing is going in South Africa. I know a lot of people are freaking out about the Delta variant, and now there's this news of the Epsilon variant out of I think it's California. Hold on, Jamie, pull that up. Hold on. You know, it probably is California, because fuck California. Let's see, Epsilon variant. As the highly contagious Delta variant of COVID-19 continues, the Epsilon variant is a foe we've met before, blah, blah, blah. It's one that originated in Southern California. There we go. I knew it. It's always California. It is always
But isn't it strange how the coronavirus is the first virus since humans have figured out germ theory that gets more dangerous with each evolution instead of less dangerous, like all the other viruses. I mean, we're so privileged to see this firsthand happen.
Yeah. The Epsilon variant is super bad, worse than the Delta variant, because now it completely like sidesteps certain or makes vaccines even less effective against the Epsilon variant. It may totally sidestep it. My question is, how many variants of this have to come out before we reach a point where we're like, okay, we're done with this?
Oh, well, did you see the latest twist in the narrative where they're saying, oh, now there's a chance that you can have two variants at the same time, so you can be infected with two different variants at the same time. That's the latest thing they're trying to spin.
So I'm privileged to live in a part of the world where it's done. We're done with this.
And as far as I can tell, the stats coming out of Florida and Texas and Sweden, for that matter, as well, just show that just open everything up and it goes away.
Yeah, Florida, Texas, I think also Louisiana joined us.
Okay, but to be fair, there's like one person for every 10 country miles in Louisiana.
That's also true. Fuck Louisiana.
It's a very sparse populated. It's like Oklahoma, dude. I mean, if
actually,
you see somebody,
it's
the monthly event.
Montana is Montana and Wyoming are the worst ones.
Yeah, there's nothing there basically.
I shouldn't actually say that. I know a friend who lives in Wyoming. He takes like a car trip to meet his neighbors. Oh my god. I'm sorry, bro. If you hear this, I'm sorry. Like, your state actually isn't that bad. It's just there's nobody there. But no, like Florida, we're just like, okay, we're done. And there's also like a lot of local. The only time it enters my mind is if I listen to like international news, or if I go to another state where they still have like regulations in place. But day to day, like for example, going to a bar or a shopping mall or whatever, like we're done completely.
Yeah.
And so that's the only time it enters my mind.
Meanwhile, back in SA, we can't even go to a bar because they closed up everything. It's ridiculous. But I did see one bar that had a brilliant idea. So it put up an ad on Facebook saying that, okay, due to the lockdown regulations, they're not making money. So in an attempt to just get some cash flow going, you can rent a hot desk. So you pay like R1 a day to rent a desk in the pub. And they've got a cafeteria there where you can buy food and stuff. So technically, the bar isn't open. You're at the office, and you're not getting a sit-down meal. You're buying food from the cafeteria and taking it back to your hot desk, which is effectively then your office, which I thought was a good idea.
Brilliant. I love the ingenuity of South Africans. Brilliant.
On the one hand, that's a good thing. On the other hand, because South Africans tend to find ways around stuff and makes a plan to keep things going, they never fight back properly against the tyranny.
That's
because they always make a plan. So now they kind of just, okay, fine. If you want to take this away, we'll get a way to work around that. Okay, you take away our booze. Okay, fine, we'll make our own booze. Stuff like that. And it short term, it's a good thing, but I think medium to long term, it's more detrimental than anything else.
That's actually very true. Yeah. I mean, when this started in Florida, like, Florida's got like a very old population. A very old population. Well, actually, very old and a very young population. It's either.
Well, you are the retirement village of America.
Which is weird because actually, per capita, there is one state that is older than Florida, and that is Maine. The problem is that Maine, the state of Maine, has like 7 people and a moose. So that's the difference. Whereas the state of Florida has, I don't know.
Retirement village, theme parks, and universities.
Hold on. I'm checking the population of Florida.
I think you guys are like 60 million, 63 million, something like that.
New York State is 8.4. New York City is 8.4. New York State is 19.5. Florida? Oh, no, wait. They say only 21 million. Huh.
In Florida, okay.
That can't be right. But the median age in years in Florida is 38.7. Yeah, there's a lot of old people in Florida. But that's South Florida, not North Florida.
Yeah.
But
that's more the coastal regions.
That is the spirit of Florida, though. It's either old people or fucking send it. Like, there is no in between. Like, it's old people or just fucking send it, boy. Like, it's like they said, like it's you can either buy a 32-ounce bottle or a 128. You can't buy a 40. And for people who know metric system, it's basically like you can either buy like a regular little dumpy of beer. Like, you can't buy those bigger bottles. You can buy like a slightly smaller than a 340 ml dumpy of beer, or 128 ounce. So it's like a giant like pop suck full of beer. There is no in between, and that is the spirit of Florida. It's like either old people or fucking send it. Like, there's no moderation whatsoever.
Yeah, but most of America seems to be like that. It's either okay, cool, very conservative, or dry county, or it's just absolute, just go for gold. It's weird.
I mean, I like it. It's very cool. It's very entertaining. It's like when this broke out, when the initial lockdowns broke out, it was like the governor put a bunch of, especially the elder people, like locked up in their elderly homes, and he actually locked them up, unlike some governors. He actually did a good job of locking them up, and then he honk honk, unlike certain governors elsewhere, but we're not going to get into that. And then he's like, you should take these steps and whatever. And then he said, like, he didn't explicitly say it, but he basically ad-libbed something to the effect of, but let's be honest, there's no way I'm going to be able to stop a bunch of 21-year-olds from partying. And the media just ran with that. And like, people were having parties here, like the undergrads were having parties here, and they're like, yeah, the governor said we're allowed to party. I'm like, that's not what he said. He just said it would be difficult to stop you.
Well, then again, it's students, dude. What are you going to do with students?
and they couldn't. Like, they really couldn't. A lot of people just went balls to the wall with this. They're like, yeah, we got the right to party. I'm like, that's not exactly what he said.
Especially after the stimulus checks came in.
Oh, bro, those stimmy checks are boss. So boss.
Well, the one thing they accomplished with the stimulus checks is the the alcohol companies and the arms and ammunition manufacturers got a massive kick in the pants with that. They got such a boost out of that.
Oh yeah, there was in many states and in many counties, there were actually for the first time in I don't know when in American history, actual ammunition rationing. Like you couldn't buy more than X amount of boxes of X type of ammunition because they were just flying off the shelves.
But that it's one thing that really grinds my gears is every time there's a small little panic in the States, they all go balls to the wall in purchasing ammo. And then countries like South Africa sitting there, okay, can I please just have one box of .22 ammunition? And like, no, the Americans bought everything up. We're waiting for stock. And that happens it happened in 2016 with the Trump election. Before that, it happened when Obama got first elected. They have this run on ammunition, and then we're sitting here like, okay, but I just want one box of ammo. And you've got guys sitting in the States with whole freaking walk-in safes that's floor to ceiling ammo stacked that they're never going to use.
Oh, I know. I actually know friends like that. I'm not even kidding. I like one of my mates. Like I actually know he has like a full on like floor to ceiling like cupboard full of ammo.
Ammo stash.
Ammo cans, rifles, fully stacked mags, just like all beautifully curated. It's like, yeah, okay, so we're preparing for standoff with the ATF. Yeah.
Waco 2.0.
Waco 2.0. So like if I ever go missing for like 3 weeks, just check the news. Like that's probably where I'm gonna meet
wrong place, name. Wrong time.
Yeah. I mean, we've got some plate carriers and ballistic armor as well. So that's and you can buy decent-ish flashbangs for surprisingly little, like $20 for a couple of them. So yeah, that's probably where I'm gonna go out. And that's gonna be the end of me. So yeah, I think that covers the politics section.
The one thing I forgot about is, did you see what's going on in Swaziland?
No, update me.
No, it's complete chaos there. Apparently, some of the residents wanted to kick the king out, and he's sending the troops, and he's hiding somewhere. But it's also just mass chaos in Swaziland at the moment. Military going around beating up civilians for supposedly supporting democracy and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's funny here in the south. And you still got ISIS running through Mozambique as well.
Yeah, how's that going?
This is the one thing that that annoys me a lot is you don't see any coverage of it. Very, very little coverage of it, if any, of the stuff happening in Mozambique and Swaziland. It's all just Jacob Zuma and the riots and the coronavirus. It's all the theater that keeps getting punted. But the real threats, like civil unrest in Swaziland, extremists running through Mozambique decapitating people, Mozambican military freaking going on a rampage through Mozambique, and you hear nothing of it, nothing, radio silence. If it wasn't for, it's mostly independent content creators that reports on it, but for the most part, mainstream media just ignores it, sweeps it under the rug.
ISIS is right there. That's pretty interesting. Like
on a back.
I can't imagine any organized nation on earth where it's like, oh, by the way, ISIS is like a couple of days march away. Not even a couple of days, like a day and a half.
Old Squirrel went for like a 3-4 day conference in Mozambique with other Southern African leaders to discuss what they're going to do. And okay, South Africa's going to send like, I don't know, 1,400 or 1,500 or something troops to Mozambique. I'm thinking like, yeah, I don't think that's going to solve the problem, guys. I mean, this is the same people that the Americans were fighting for how many years in the Middle East?
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking about America here. Now you guys want to send a Mickey Mouse force of 4,000 or 5,000 into the jungles? I
4 or
mean, come on.
5,000 people who, let's face it, at this point, the South African military is just an unemployment plan for people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the average age is 36 for infantrymen. That's old for the military, dude. That's really old. And also, I mean, it's in the portion of Mozambique where ISIS is. It's not exactly the Africa that you see on Discovery Channel. It is northern Mozambique. It's jungle warfare, and it's in an area of Mozambique that's still littered with landmines from their civil war in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. I mean,
It's not
we
an
used to
easy
be really
place to
good
go
at
and
jungle
fight.
warfare.
Yeah. And
We
then
used to
add
be.
to that, the Mozambican military has, for a large portion of it, has just gone rogue because of salary disputes and the usual stuff. You know, the king is not paying the peasants or the security details. So, I mean, now you're contending with ISIS running around. You're contending with the landmines and stuff from the civil war that's left behind. And then add to that the local military that's unreliable in the best of scenarios. And they want to send 3,000 or 4,000 poorly trained, poorly equipped people in to go and deal with it. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of ISIS and all that, I see older Uncle Joe's decided to really facilitate a pullout of Afghanistan.
Yeah, I saw something about them just like packing up and leaving an Air Force base like in the dead of the night, just bailing.
So I have in my mind a couple of thoughts on this, some of them conflicting. Being the libertarian that I am, I tend to believe that America is kind of on the same trajectory as Rome, in that you're giving the peasants bread and circuses, you know, Netflix and stimmy checks, and you're embroiled in ever increasing foreign wars, you know. So it's funny how history repeats itself like that. And so yeah, so in terms of Afghanistan, and I've heard a lot of conservative commentators, most notably Michael Knowles and Ben Shapiro, sort of saying, "Oh, we shouldn't be pulling out. We haven't been there that long." And this is what annoys me about them, like especially with like Ben and Michael, is that this is the neoconservative streak in them, and they're like, we should come home and all that. I'm like, pick up a rifle, Ben. Seriously, pick up a rifle. When are you gonna go? When are you gonna go? Or when are you gonna send your kids? Because if you stay there another 20 years, your kids will be old enough to serve. So yeah, and same thing for Michael. When he's had a kid recently. You stay there a couple of years, your daughter and sons are going to be old enough to go. So go ahead. So that annoys me about them, and their justification is that, I mean, if you factor out 2010-ish, that's when they were looking at, in terms of, I looked at the Wikipedia article, hundreds of casualties a year. Now they're down to like 10 casualties a year. Let's take that as gospel. I don't, but let's, for the sake of argument, take that as gospel, that they're only losing killed in action 10, 20 soldiers a year in Afghanistan. And granted, Ben pointed out, there's more cops that get killed in Chicago a year than that. That's not an argument for how peaceful Afghanistan is. It's an argument for how violent Chicago is. But yeah.
And the thing is, I've got a bit of a, on the one hand, in my opinion, America didn't make the same mistake they made in the Second World War. In regards to, or just before the Second World War, they said, "Oh no, we're not going to get involved, not going to get involved, not going to get involved." So they got involved. But the problem is, if you get involved, you must realize that you're in it for the long haul. So you can't just go and fight, and then bugger off, because you're leaving a country with no government whatsoever, no infrastructure, nothing. And if there's a power vacuum, the worst elements in society is going to bubble to the top first. It's just the way it works. So America pulling out of Afghanistan and out of the region would be very bad in the short term for the people of the country, and it would possibly give rise to even a worse regime than they went in there to fight in the first place. So yes, they could do it a lot better, focusing on getting the country actually to a point where it can be self-sustainable. But for them to pull out now would be disastrous. And the American military knows this. They've seen this happen in the same conflict, where they fight tooth and nail to win, quote unquote, a certain region, and then they just leave it. And then the worst elements come in and take over, and then they have to go back in there and clean the place up again. And Ramadi is one of the places where they lost hundreds skilled in action because they cleaned the place up, but then they didn't stay there and help the locals implement the infrastructure and government that's needed and law enforcement that's needed to maintain the peace in the area. They just leave and expect the people to figure it out themselves. And it just doesn't work like that.
That's so basically that was the other point I was going to say is the argument you're making is what I like to call the Germany and South Korea occupation argument, where, because there's two sides of this. There's the Noam Chomsky, anywhere there are Americans occupying is bad argument side, and then there's the Germany Japan occupation side. My thing is, I get it, like you have to be in there for the long haul. And this is what annoyed me about Michael Knowles. He's like, the British and the French used to fight wars for 100 years. Yeah, well, people used to die of tooth abscesses for 100 years. Should we keep doing that as well? Like, just because it used to be that way doesn't. Okay, I get it, but they need to understand that the cost of staying there is going to be, like you say, incredibly high. And the other thing is, my only question is, maybe the occupation of Germany and Japan worked because those are cultures that are amenable to occupation, and the ideology of those cultures is amenable to occupation. Like the German Western European way of thinking is amenable to occupation. It's amenable to building up of nation building. It's amenable to sort of Western democratic ideals. That is not the case in Afghanistan, and I wonder how long do you have to stay there, because their ideology, their culture is not amenable to what they're trying to do in terms of nation building. So I'm like, how long do you have to stay there for it to change?
I think what a lot of people forget is, or don't know about, is the whole Middle East. Go look at the whole Middle East. All those countries you see on the map is very, very new. Most of them only came into being after the decolonization, like after the First World War, when the Europeans and everybody moved into the Middle East. Before that, there wasn't countries, there wasn't nations. It was all tribal, it was all honor system. That whole Middle East, there wasn't any fixed countries. It wasn't like Europe where you had fixed countries, or America where you had the country with borders and state lines and stuff like that. It was just open. It was just tribes roaming about, making a living. So, and when the colonization project kicked off there, they went and they put down the borders. So now you're taking nomadic hunter-gatherers and you are forcing them within borders. It's two totally different worlds. So, I mean, that's not a lot of time. I mean, take Europe. How many centuries did it take for Europe before they actually got their borderlines sort of nation-building project going properly? It took a very long time.
Several centuries.
And it was in flux for, I mean, go back to 2,000 years ago, and Europe has been in flux all that time. Borders shifting constantly, countries coming up, countries falling apart. I mean, Austro-Hungarian Empire was around a bit more than 100 years ago still. The Turkish Empire was around a bit more than 100 years ago still. So it's very new. The people on the ground hasn't had time to adapt and to catch up with the developments. So if you're going to go in there and get things up to Western standards, quote unquote, you're going to be there for a long time. But it would also go better and quicker if the rest of the bums just got up off of their sofas and actually helped. So if you had all your Western countries putting in efforts to support the Americans and make it a global effort, sort of.
Yeah, that's the thing. That they can't foot the check alone. They cannot foot the check alone. Well, they should not foot the check alone, because the thing is, them, because I actually tend to agree with that's the non-libertarian part of me. I'm like, this is actually because I don't like interventionism, but this is a problem with global externalities, because if you don't do this, like this problem is going to spill over elsewhere into the world. So yes, it's expensive to occupy, but if you don't do it, this problem is going to spill over to the rest of the world. How do we know this? Because we've seen it actually happen in the last 20 years or so. We've seen it since 9/11 and all the stuff in Europe and all that. It's like, yeah, if you don't handle this, it is going to come spill over to your front doorstep.
I'm going to geek out a bit. If Daryl Cooper of the Martimate podcast raises a good point. This is one of the biggest mistakes Americans have made since the Second World War, is they decide to go and help in an area, or to go into an area to help or to achieve certain goals, but they go in there without sufficient knowledge of what's going on there. So if you take the Middle East, for instance, when the Europeans, when the British went in there, and when the Americans got in there, they go in there and they say, oh, this group of people attacked that group of people, so they are the bad guys. But what they don't know is the two groups have had a blood feud for the last 7 generations. And that one instance they saw was just the latest reprisal attack. So they go in there without sufficient knowledge of what's going on in the region, and then they try and fix it. But by trying to fix it, they just mess up the whole thing, because the guy they thought was the bad guy wasn't actually. There isn't actually good and bad guys. It's a different operating system that they're running on.
Exactly. There's just these guys and these other guys.
I mean, the same thing in Vietnam. I mean, Vietnam successfully defended their country for how many centuries? I mean, they stopped the Chinese, they stopped the Japanese from invading. I mean, and even China would have lost to the Japanese if it wasn't for intervention from America. So they knew how to fight.
But they knew how to fight, and they knew how to fight asymmetric warfare. Because at the end of the day, this is the thing I keep telling people is like, it's like asymmetric warfare is both, one, costly and difficult to defend against, and two, extremely demoralizing to the conventional occupying force to fight.
And I mean, they went into Vietnam with advisors. They sent advisors to Vietnam. And then the French, what they didn't know is the French was just looking for a way out of the mess. So right. They've got this history of going into an area without sufficient knowledge of what's going on in the area, and it just becomes a mess that they end up fitting the bill for. But the other thing is, as well, it's a difficult thing. So America has marketed itself for a long time now as the country of the free. They are the representatives of freedom in the world, basically. So if you get an instance like Rwanda or DRC or the Middle East and stuff like that, you've got to make a choice. Okay, we say we are for democracy and freedom. In that country, people are being killed and living under tyranny because they want democracy and freedom, and the regime doesn't want to allow it. So do you intervene, yes or no? And the problem is everybody, and you've seen this multiple times, all the nations just throw their hands up. So, oh, someone has to do something over there. That's not right, but no one wants to pitch in and do it. And then America goes and says, okay, fine, we're going to go do something, and then they become the bad guys somehow. I don't know. It's one of those weird scenarios. So either everybody gets in and helps, or nobody gets in and helps, and it's to each his own. I mean, it's the one or the other.
I mean, for all the foibles of good old Donnie from Queens, he was one of the people who said, listen, NATO, people are like, oh, he's being mean to our NATO allies. No, he's saying, listen, guys, you need to pay your share. Mm. Like, you need to step up and pay your part of this bill, because we're done with being sole, bankers of this whole situation. And I agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, apart from your run-of-the-mill corruption and buddy system that you get in all governments, the number one reason why Americans' tax rates are as high as it is because of the military, is to fund the wars and fund the military. So if the people of the country are going to keep on forking out money to something to go and fight offshore, then the other countries that wants to be part of it and wants to reap the benefits of it must also fit the bill.
Yeah.
Because go look at all the European countries. Yes, they also have high tax rates, but the money gets doled out everywhere else except on the military and to support the offshore conflicts that they are quote unquote supporting or that they're involved in.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at any continental European military, it's even the Germans, the French, let's look in the English there, they are a shell of the militaries they used to be, an absolute shell of the militaries they used to be.
I mean, I saw an article, a small little newspaper somewhere from Germany, where one of the politicians, they said, okay, but it's time for the Americans to leave, to get out of Europe now. And they said, well, they can't really afford to let the Americans go because their own military are not able to sufficiently defend their country if you take the Americans out of the picture. Because all the European countries, or a lot of the European countries, have become so dependent on the American military that's there, that they just didn't spend the money on their own military. They just spend it somewhere else that's more convenient. So people are quick to judge America, but if you go and look at the countries that are judging them, they've got no foot to stand on in most instances.
Correct, 100%. And that brings me to the last thing that I wanted to discuss in terms of their military is now there's this locally here. I mean, they don't talk about it that often in my day-to-day life here, but locally there is this ratcheting up of pressure in terms of, red states, blue states, northern states, southern states. And increasingly you see people talking about a national divorce or a balkanization or a breakup of the United States as it exists right now. I only have one thing to say about that, and that is this. The United States has not fought a serious conflict on its own within its own borders since the Civil War. And I think that, yes, maybe it could happen. Like, I'm never going to say this will never happen, a second Civil War. But a lot of the people who are LARPing and shouting about this happening and sort of half ironically, half seriously saying, hell yeah, let's do it. I think that it's been so long that since they fought a war on their own soil, that the memory of what that looks like has escaped the collective consciousness of the American people. Because it is terrible. Like, to them, war is always something that you do overseas somewhere else. But that's like, sure, let's say it happens. It's not going to be fun fighting this on your own doorstep. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be what you imagine it to be.
I mean, go ask any Afrikaner that has got a bit of knowledge of the history in South Africa, and they'll tell you a civil war, a war on your home turf, is not something that you want. Because now it's not just the soldiers who put their lives on the line. Everybody's lives are on the line. Everybody's a possible target.
Everybody's a possible target.
Your parents, everybody.
Everyone.
All your possessions, everything is up for grabs.
Infrastructure, your people, everything is now a target. Yep.
And everything, and I agree with you. The Americans, the wars are overseas. So the soldiers go and they go overseas. But their house and their wife and their kids and their cars and their savings and their retirement fund, everything is nice and safe and cozy back in the States. Where if it's a war within your borders, everything is up for grabs. And everything grinds to a halt, basically, except for the war. Your education, your healthcare, everything takes a nosedive. So, but yeah, I've also said this multiple times. People are easy to say, oh, civil war. It's not as fun as it looks like in the movies. It's not as flashy and as glamorous as it's portrayed by Hollywood.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I mean, especially now, like they're talking like with all the hubbub in the military, and they're like, yeah, the military's loyalty is to the Constitution and not to the president and all that. Like, guys, when a soldier has to start shooting someone who lived half an hour's drive away from him, that is incredibly demoralizing as well. On top of everything being a target, it's just demoralizing that you are now shooting your neighbors. It's not going to be pretty. No matter how decisively you win it, it's not going to be pretty.
I mean, it took, with the last civil war America had, it took them a very long time for the damage that the social fabric took to restore itself. It took a very long time for that to get sorted out and to sort of get momentum again, because the damage is far-reaching. I mean, like you said, you rip apart the very fabric that's sort of keeping everything together, that everybody's working on. It gets messed up completely.
And in some cases, I think it may actually be not possible to fix it.
I don't think if you're going to look at it realistically, I don't think there's any realistic chance of a split or a civil war breaking out in America. It's just going too well still. In general, across America, it's going way too well. I mean, civil war, like I said, and large-scale social unrest, you need a couple of factors: poverty, widespread unemployment, high inflation. There's a couple of indicators. There's a couple of ingredients you need to bake that cake, and America just doesn't have it. I mean, if nothing serious kicked off with the riots and stuff in 2016 and 2020, and it was pushed. I mean, your mainstream media, a lot of your politicians, they pushed for that, and they couldn't get it going in any meaningful way. So it's just going way too well still, way too well.
I mean, you could say the same about back home. It's still going way too well for way too many people in South Africa.
Yeah, but the problem is I think we've gone over the point where there's enough people that are impoverished to a very serious degree to make it a very real possibility. But it's the same that you have in every country. The people that's in the middle class sphere, they forget about the rest of the people because they're not in the same. They don't see them day to day. They don't interact with them day to day. It's they're isolated from the decay and the rot at the bottom. And South Africa, I mean, we're basically 60 million people in this country. Our middle class is effectively maybe 4 million. That's a large chunk of the population that's at the lower ranks of the social.
I think that's a highball estimate. That's a highball estimate of the middle class.
Yeah, it is. Because if you just go look at aerial photos around every major city, you can see the little suburbs everywhere, your middle class suburbs, and then you go and look at the townships and the informal settlements. That is vast, dude. That is millions upon millions of people living there. But all fun and games.
It is. Okay, so I forgot. I did commit to discussing a tech topic today. And that is the hubbub around a certain star at the relatively center of our galaxy, named VVV-WIT-8.
That's a stellar name for a star.
I hate it. People are always like, programmers have the worst naming convention in science. I'm like, have you seen the naming conventions of astronomers? Like,
oh, it's bad.
Like, yeah, sure, we have shit naming conventions for technologies and variables and code and all that. But I'm like, just spend 5 minutes looking at the name. Do you know what the WIT actually stands for? In that, it literally stands for "What is this?"
Oh yeah, there's another one that they initially named WTF. Yeah. And then the university, whoever in charge said, okay, no, we can't name it that.
Yeah. So it's VV-WIT-8. I'm just going to call it Trip V for the rest of the spiel. Okay, so Trip V, it's a very large star. relatively close to the center of our galaxy. It's quite an old star, actually, from what we can see through spectrometry. It's cooling off. It's about 20 or so times the size of our own sun, but it's much cooler. So it's on its way out, from what we can tell. It's basically hit 45 years old, and it's chilling, and its kids are running around in university doing whatever.
Looking for convertible to buy.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So that's the age range we're looking at for this star. So why do we care about the star? Well, because of transitory light dimming observations. So we've been looking at this star for about 16, 20 years, and recently we confirmed we observed something transitory in front of it, passed in front of it, because this is how we find exoplanets, for those of you who don't know. How do we find a lot of exoplanets? Well, basically, we just look at stars and we wait for something to pass in front of that star. Because even if you were looking at Earth, if Earth passed in front of the sun, then the sun's brightness would dim by a certain percentage because the Earth is blocking that light. So this one had that occur, and like you said, there was that other one, Tabby Star, that was initially called WTF. And it dimmed as well, but we determined it was just a sort of dust and comets passing in front of it, and it dimmed by about 20%. Trip V has dimmed by 90%. So for a star this big to have its light dim by 90%, whatever the hell is passing in front of that thing is absolutely massive, like huge. Almost the size of the star itself. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that with Tabby Star, when we observed it, the temperature yes, it dimmed, but the temperature didn't go down too much. Whereas this thing, whatever blocked it, not only blocked its light, but was actually blocking its infrared radiation. That's pretty wild. As blocking its infrared radiation. We don't know a lot of that. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying it's never aliens. It's never, ever, ever aliens, guys. It's never aliens. Until it is. Until it is. And that's kind of what, I mean, I would love it to be aliens, but Joe Rogan, I'm surprised that he's not going ballistic over this. But it's never aliens. So we have this thing. It's blocking both the light and the infrared radiation. Okay. What makes it even more interesting is the light dimming pattern that we observed was in a sort of whatever blocked it was in a sort of very sharp, regular shape, like a giant oval thing. It appears to be some sort of giant oval passes in front of it. Nature doesn't make giant, sharply defined ovals. Okay, the best you're going to get is a planet like ours that's roundish, but a very sharply defined oval. Nature doesn't do that, or at least we still haven't found nature doing that. So it's something that both block the light, block the infrared radiation. It's sharply defined. Now there is a chance we just happened to see something pass in front of it, and it's not actually orbiting the sun. We just happened to see something passing in front of it, but the odds of that are pretty small. It's much more likely from a gravitational perspective that something is locking this thing in gravitationally. So that's the other thing. And then the next thing is that whatever it's blocking the light, it's blocking the radiation, and it's regularly shaped, and so it's collecting energy from the star somehow, and it's at a place in the Milky Way that we've determined if there's some, because remember, we're effectively in the backwoods suburban area of the Milky Way. So if there was some sort of alien civilization, the civilizations that would spring up first or get there fastest would be most likely near the center of the Milky Way, as opposed to out to the backwoods where it takes time for processes to cool down and get stable and all that. that's all already happened at the center of the Milky Way. So there's that, and it's 25,000 light years away. So whatever we're looking at occurred 25,000 years ago.
Yes.
So that's the thing. So even if it is aliens, they could no longer be there for all we know, because this happened 25,000 years ago. It's not like our Alpha Centauri, which is like a drive from Midrand to Pretoria. No, it's like
that's a long drive.
It's like a drive from Pretoria to Durban type thing. Okay, it's very far away, and whatever occurred. So, just for all of you to know, I'm not saying it's aliens, because it's never aliens. And one of the things I don't like about people jumping to aliens is that it leads to an aliens of the gaps. There's the argument against religion in that the god of the gaps. Well, I call this the aliens of the gaps, in that we don't know what they can do until we see them do it.
Yeah, we might not want to see what they do.
Well, it's going to be my next topic is Chimera weapons. But so the best hope I can give on this is we have to keep watching this thing to see it happen again. But it is possible that what we have observed is what we often refer to as a Dyson sphere or a Dyson swarm, whereby advanced civilizations, because basically every star in the universe is just a giant nuclear reaction up for grabs, tons of energy just up for grabs, wasting away. And the idea here is that as civilizations advance, we get to a point where we're like, yeah, nuclear energy on Earth is cool, but we've got a giant reactor in space and it's just sitting to waste. And the prevailing wisdom is why we look at stars this way is that if a civilization gets advanced enough, it'll build a giant array of collectors around its star and other stars around it to collect that energy to do, well, pretty much whatever. Pretty much whatever. So
that's cool.
I'm going to give it for Belleville Pete and for people who want this to be aliens, I'm going to say it's a 10% chance that it's aliens. And even if it is, it was 25,000 years ago, at a point where we were basically still cavemen.
But it would actually be a bit more than 25,000 years ago, because it's 25,000 light years away from us. So that's if you travel at the speed of light. So it might actually be a bit more than that.
Yeah. I'm being generous with the estimate there. I'm being generous as to our advancement pointer. Like, it was basically like we just learned how to walk upright. So this thing passed in front of that star when we were learning to walk upright, and the light from it has only reached us now, which is why we can observe it now. So I don't know, guys. I don't think. I'm sorry. I hate to let you all down. I know Joe Rogan's going to be sad, but I'm going to say it's not aliens, because I would be happy to be wrong that it's aliens. Or actually, I'd be terrified to be wrong that it's because, like I said,
I for one do not welcome our overlords.
Yeah, because there's no way we come out of that on top. There's just no way.
No.
Which is why my other topic is Chimera weapons, which is, so there's this prevailing thing that we should pump the brakes on any sort of weapons that we're creating nowadays. And I'm here to take the very unpopular position and saying, no, we should be slamming the gas, making the most destructive things we can imagine, the most destructive and creatively destructive things that our understanding of physics allows. There's a spell, my boy Isaac Arthur pointed this out. There's a spell in Dungeons and Dragons called Color Spray, where it does a bunch of different things. Like, it's different colors of magic, and each light ray does different things, like turn you to stone, put acid on you, whatever. And I think we should be developing Color Spray Chimera type weapons. We should be developing a sort of rail guns that fire slugs that also, when it hits the target, releases a bunch of nanomachines that disassembles you. And the reason I'm saying that is we don't know what eldritch horrors are out there, so I would rather be in the position where we just have the most absolutely bonkers weapons, because we're only going to get one shot. That's it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We should be doing target practice on other planets, moons, and stuff. We really need to up our game on that.
We should be making strange matter bombs that are also relativistic kill missiles, like everything we can imagine.
Yeah. I've got another sort of spacey topic. Did you see what Richard Branson did today?
No. Wait, he's still doing stuff?
Oh, yeah. Virgin Galactic, he took a trip. Virgin Galactic, they built like this weird-looking little jet that they fit into the bottom of another airplane and take it up to, I think it's 50,000 feet or something. And then the small jet with the passengers in like dislodges, and then it just like shoots up and it goes right onto the edge of space, and then it comes back down. So Richard Branson took the test flight with that, and then next year they're going to start selling, or they plan to start selling commercial tickets for that. So you can go up like right to the edge of space, 100 k's up, and then get a bit of zero gravity like you do on the Vomit Comet. Same principle, just like accelerating. I think they say it accelerates up since it dislodges from the main plane. It goes up from 10,000 feet all the way up to 100 kilometers, and it's doing around 4,000 kilometers an hour. And then it tops out, and then it comes back down and lands in New Mexico.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, it's really quite. I think it would be a freaking fun ride to go on.
I mean, I wish I had the kind of money to do that, but
yeah. I think it might be out of our price range.
just a little. But I like that in that I really like the concept of that, because I'm very pro the commercialization of space, because I quite like the magic of capitalism doing things in space. Like, the more we focus on it, the more we're going to have market incentive to develop things and compete and make things better, faster, cheaper. Yeah.
But it showed me what was interesting is what I thought about is you've got Richard Branson that did it this way. So theoretically, you can actually send that space. You can make it a rocket and actually send it out of space, out of our atmosphere into space, on the same principle. But if I look at it just offhand, it seems like a much cheaper way to do it than Elon Musk did it with his launch the space shuttle up and then get it to land again and all of that. So I think it's going to be quite interesting to see if Virgin Galactic takes this a bit further and tries to actually get stuff into orbit around Earth in the same way. Because it does seem a lot cheaper than building dedicated rockets and getting it to go from the ground all the way up.
Yeah, remember, Elon is a visionary, guys. Like, everything he does is just so fucking hate Elon. Hate him so much. Hate him.
Ooh, the salt.
Anyone with a long term listening to the show knows that the endless lore, the rivalry, that my hatred of him, everyone knows that, so it's not a surprise.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking of that thing I sent you with the electric taxi cabs. What was it, like 1945 or something, that they had fully electric taxi cabs already?
Exactly. The dude isn't even. He has a degree, a BA in physics. He's not even Anyway,
he gets stuff done.
I mean, he does do some good things, but he's not Iron Man, guys. He's not that brilliant.
Well, he's rich enough that he could be if he wanted to.
I mean, I could also do great things if the government gave me me and my company incredible subsidies, and my dad gave me a great starting point.
Yeah. Well, talking about government subsidies, they're looking at Bill Gates, bugger. He also got a massive amount of money from governments. Did you see? way off topic, but I checked one of our government departments here in South Africa. Actually, they were supposed to pay license fee for Windows operating systems. Their bill was something like 56 million rand, and they ended up accidentally, quote unquote, paying something like 156 million rand over to Microsoft for the licenses. Accidentally paid 100 million more than they should have.
Nice.
So, well, that probably went towards the Bill Gates divorce fund.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I wonder how that's going.
The last I saw.
You should have just stuck with it. You should have just stuck with it, because at this point, like the divorce is going to be so costly for you. Okay?
Yeah, the last thing I saw on that was that they said no, Melinda Gates is going to be leaving the Gates Foundation because they decided they won't be able to work together. Which is, that whole thing is a bit sus, if you ask me. I mean, they've been married for a very long time, considering.
Yeah, wasn't he like 22 when they got married or something stupid like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, they've been married for a long time by today's standards, and to now all of a sudden, divorce, and they can't work together anymore, and I don't know, it just seems sus. I think there's a whole different story running around there. That's
what do you think it's? What do you think it's a cover for? Like, yeah, I get it, it's sus, but like for what?
Personally, I think Melinda Gates probably has been turning a blind eye to a lot of dodgy things that Bill Gates has been doing, and because I do get the feeling that the split is coming from her side more than from his side, and she's just decided, okay, I'll at that stage in life where I can take the money and go retire. Basically, that's the feeling I get, that she turned a blind eye to some dodgy stuff for a long time, and basically just had enough now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they've been together for a while. Okay, so I just looked this up. Apparently, they've been together for a while. Even the official marriage was way back in 1994.
Yes,
27 But they actually have been together since 1987.
Yes, that's a long time.
And it says, at the time of their marriage, Gates was given permission by Melinda to spend limited time with his ex-girlfriend, businesswoman Anne Windland. so even back then, he was already doing dodgy shit.
Yeah, he is a dodgy character, always has been. Never trusted the guy.
So, yeah, I think honestly, I think Melinda's just like, I think you're right. She's just like, you know what? I'm getting out now because.
No, well, let's face it. She just her own capital. I'm pretty sure she has enough to have a comfortable retirement. That's excluding what she's getting out of the divorce. She could already have a comfortable retirement. Add that to the mix, and she can go bonkers if she wanted to.
Yeah. No, I think she's actually probably pulling a smart move here and getting out while they're getting stupid. Because, like, I wouldn't be surprised in 10, 15 years' time where we really see some weird shit coming out from the... Yeah. Speaking of since we're in the conspiracies section, R.I.P. to our man John McAfee, who definitely did not kill himself.
Along with Epstein. Dude, that is the weirdest thing ever. But like I said last time as well, it's one of those. It could either be legitimate or it could all be planned. I mean, because you don't know with McAfee.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a chance that this is an elaborate troll on his part and he actually did kill himself. So I am willing to entertain that possibility, but I think it's likely that and people like, okay, well because remember the kind of circles that McAfee ran in. He probably was witness to some shit. Like, taxes aside, let's say, I don't think this is just about the taxes that they wanted from him. I think he witnessed to some shit. I mean, there was the episode he did on our show. Like, he witnessed some shit.
Yeah, but I thought about it a bit. I was like, okay, let's say it was an elaborate troll on his part. But if you think about it a bit further, indirectly, the your deep state still killed him because of the situations that he was forced into by them. They're still partially at fault, even if he did off himself. They still have some blood on their hands in that instance.
Absolutely. And I keep telling people, like, it's not just that this guy's gone. It's just that the implication is, I keep trying to tell people, if they can do it to him, if they can do this to anybody, anyone.
We'll take a look, a slightly different scenario, but take a look at Bill Cosby. I mean, that whole shit show of a trial of his was just unbelievable. That actually get pushed through.
Okay, so I'm going to cover this quick with the very limited legal understanding that I have. I've actually looked into this. Okay, Bill Cosby. The best way to sum this up is it's not that he's out because he's innocent. He's out because the prosecutor didn't follow procedure to nail him. That's the summation. Because of the certain, because he was afforded certain protections or violated certain protections when he had to admit things in certain cases. Because that admission was used in another case, the court's like, yeah, so as it turns out, you can't do that, and therefore this is invalid, so we have to let him go. And I will reiterate again, I 100% believe this man is guilty of sin. I just understand that he's out on procedure grounds rather than on actual guilt or innocence.
Yeah, but there's a problem with the guilt one as well, because everything. Initially when he was charged, the initial judge said there's not enough evidence to try this man. He got kicked out of court. But the prosecutor at that stage, because the public prosecutor is elected, he was running against another guy. And the other guy that he was running against, his whole thing was he was going to prosecute Bill Cosby if he became the prosecutor.
Yes.
And then he lost. So then the case got kicked out. He said there's not enough evidence. There just isn't enough evidence, because there was one witness from like 70 years ago or something, whatever. There wasn't any evidence. So they said, okay, they're going to kick it out. They're going to have a deposition, and the deposition cannot be used in the court in a court case. And then the next election cycle, the prosecutor lost, and the guy who made his whole campaign on he's going to prosecute Bill Cosby became the prosecutor. So then he filed for the charges, but then he got elected to the judge or something. So the guy that actually that ran his election campaign on he's going to prosecute Cosby then became the judge that judged Cosby's case. So right there, that shouldn't have happened in the first place. In the first place, that shouldn't have happened. I mean, you can't have someone that is openly biased against the accused being the judge in the accused case. That's a kangaroo court, no matter which way you slice it. And then they had witnesses just piling on, one after the other. There's no physical evidence. It's all witness testimonials, quote unquote. And it's all of the things that he was charged with fell outside the statute of limitations, as far as I could tell. So that the whole court case was a kangaroo court to begin with. So did he do some fucked up shit? Most probably.
Yeah,
like 90%, like 90% of the people of his caliber did in those days. But all of the accusations are like from way back. We're talking decades ago. It's such a weird thing that they're pushing for this. It's just, I can't believe it actually went through the court system and they had a trial in the first place.
It's just, yeah.
Let me go check out. Razorfist did a video on it.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I just remembered it now. He did do a brilliant video on that. So
it was an absolute circus. That's all it was.
And
Like, but
I'm,
like,
I'm gonna I'm gonna make a prediction. I think Weinstein might get out on a similar sort of situation.
yeah, I mean, is he a scumbag? Most probably.
Probably.
Like most of the other people in Hollywood of his caliber.
Yeah.
But
It's
according
like
to the rules and your justice system, can you be found guilty? Can you be prosecuted? Can you put him on trial? And it doesn't seem that it's possible. I mean, it's easy to get people to say what you need them to say in the moment. I mean, just look what they did to Trump and to how many other politicians in the past. Getting a witness is one of the easiest things that you can do. But that's why the judicial system is supposed to insist on evidence, actual evidence, when you take someone to trial.
right. So yeah, I will say, yeah, I'm pretty good. And the thing is, like you said, what you said there is the critical thing is that is he a scumbag? Most probably, like most people of that caliber, because let's be honest, in that sort of environment, that's the norm, not the exception.
Yeah, it is, and it's been like that for more than 100 years now.
And that's not
It's
me
been
saying it's
Hollywood's-
okay. I'm just saying that's what it is.
Yeah, well, it's if you think of it, a different example, go and read Blood Meridian, in the original, one of the older copies. Go and look at the language that's used in the book. If you wrote a book today with that kind of language usage, you would get burned at a stake. I'm pretty sure of it. That book would get banned in half of the world easily. But in the time that it was written and in the time that the story plays out, that it's a totally different scenario from where we are today. So I'm not making excuses for it. I'm just saying that it was a different time, and it's a different culture, effectively.
Yeah, you can't retroactively change. I mean, like you said, yeah, it's a different time. We can't retroactively change that.
Yeah, I mean, to prosecute someone by today's standards for something that was did in a totally different society doesn't quite sit well with me. I mean, wrong or right, it's irrelevant. I mean, it was a different time. But while that seems to be the norm these days, we want to prosecute people for stuff that happened eons ago, that they didn't even do, but there's sort of people related to them kind of did. We're going to prosecute them. So this retroactively enforcing modern day standards seems to be the word of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that. I do have one last topic though, and that is, so I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of, especially younger conservatives online now, are starting to fantasize about a return to monarchy, and the old ways, and B, starting to say capitalism bad, which is weird because that was like one of the cornerstones of conservatism. Now, I get why they fantasize about monarchy, because they want somebody with strength and power to effect real change real quickly, and because they also, and this is, I think we've discussed this, it's the same effect as the fantasy of the zombie apocalypse, is you imagine you're going to be the hero and the survivor. You imagine if we go back to feudalism, you're going to be a knight or something. Turns out most of us are not going to be in that position. You will most likely not be in that position. That you
will be peasants.
Yeah. So yeah, you're like, yeah, monarchy would be great. I'm like, you imagine you're going to have a good time. You're not. That's why I don't fantasize about a zombie apocalypse. Like, you imagine you're going to survive. No, you're probably going to get bit in a week or two, or somebody will shoot you for your food rations. Like, yeah. But the capitalism bad thing is what I actually wanted to discuss. And I've now realized that the left and the right inherently perceive capitalism to be bad. Well, now they both do, but for different reasons. The left rejected capitalism because they inherently believe it is evil, and now they're like, oh, it has to go. And the right are like, they up until recently inherently believed it would be good and that it would cause good things, and now that it's not doing that, not necessarily all the time, they're like, oh, so capitalism is actually bad. Capitalism is neither good or bad. It's just capitalism. It's a mechanism for providing goods and services, for distributing market forces. It's just that. You can use, it's like electricity. It's neither inherently good nor bad. You can use it to film some sort of dodgy act, or you can use electricity to execute some sort of, I don't know, rapist or something. So it's just electricity. It's neither good nor bad. And I think that's what both sides now need to understand, that it's not inherently good or bad, capitalism. It's just what you use it for. That's it.
Yeah, I kind of missed most of what you said because the line broke up a bit. But I kind of got the gist. So I just got two things. Firstly, I'm pretty sure the Israelites went through the same thing with like, oh, we want a monarch, and it didn't turn out too well for them. Firstly, so historically, it's not a good idea to go back to monarchy. It usually doesn't work out well for you. And the other thing is on the capitalism, I think a lot of people are confused. They, like in America, for instance, they think they live in a pure capitalist free market. They don't.
No.
I don't know of one country on the planet that has a pure free market. It doesn't exist. There's always some government interference which allows certain monopolies to rise. It's never an absolutely free market. It just never is. And most 99% of the qualms that people have with capitalism, quote unquote, is because of interference by government or monopolies. It's the manipulation of the system that gives bad results. Yes, there must be some form of regulation in a market. There will necessarily have to be some regulation in a market. Otherwise, it's going to go sour very quickly. But I think people focus on the wrong. They don't see the forest for the trees. So they focus, oh, it's capitalism, it's bad. But what they don't see is the negative effects that they are concerned about is not because of the market system that's using, it's the interference in the market system that's giving you the negative results. But looking at education levels globally, I don't know how you get people to understand that, because I've seen very highly educated people make stupid assumptions like that, like, oh, it's capitalism. Well, no, it's not. It's the government and certain rich individuals poking around inside the system that's causing the negative effects. It's not the system that you're using. Like you said, it's a tool. It's in the same argument people against guns or against alcohol or against whatever. It's just a tool. The tool can't do anything on its own. It's how you apply it that gives you a good or a negative result.
Well, I'm starting to think, my question is, why do people have this tendency to want to blame the tool? And I think maybe it's just easier to blame the tool than to realize that it's just a tool. The issue is the tool user.
It was like I've said multiple times, that's just the way humans work. We want to have something definitive that we can blame for the bad things that's happening or the good things that are happening. But if something bad happens, we want something definitive, something objective that we can blame for the bad thing that's happening. And that happens on every level that you can think of. In South Africa, the country's doing bad, unemployment is high, oh, it's white monopoly capital. Weimar, Germany, oh, it's going bad, oh, it's the Jews. They do it all over the show. People do it all the time. Oh, there was a mass shooting, oh, it's the guns. It's because there's something to blame. Humans don't do very well with uncertainty. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like chaos. Which is a good and a bad thing, depends on how metered it is. But yeah, you get the same thing with if you look at like school shootings, for instance, they will go and point out the obvious one and completely ignore the myriad of other elements that contributed to that situation. And a large part of it, I think, is how the media represents things. Because if there's a mass shooting or school shooting and you go and point out that it was poverty and bullying at school, that was the major contributing factors. Those are big issues to solve. It's not something that you can grasp.
Oh, yeah.
It's not, you can't show it on a photo in the 8 o'clock news. So it's a very large, very complicated, very complex problem to address. Much easier just to show, it was the AR-15 that caused this, or it was 4chan that caused this, or something like that. Well, the 4chan thing is getting funny now, but you see what I'm saying? And it's just, people do that all the time. And the sources of information, media and mainstream media, they don't make it any better because it doesn't fit their business model.
Yeah, I'd say it doesn't. I mean, yeah, you hit it nail on the head there. Like, it doesn't fit the business model, so it's just way easier to say, yeah, it's I mean, who wants to solve poverty and bullying when you can just say it was this gun that we just need to pass the thing to ban?
And what's the sad thing is we've got, if you go and look at in the past, historically, we've got so many examples of when you blame the wrong things for a situation. And like, let's take the firearms, for instance. Okay, it's the AR-15, it's guns is a problem, AR-15s. Okay, so now you ban fully automatic weapons. Okay, but now the shootings continue. Take England, for instance. Okay, we're going to ban this guns. Okay, cool. But the violence and murder still continue. Then you ban the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Now guns are, almost no one has guns in the UK, but now they're stabbing people. Oh, now we're going to start regulating knives. Blade can't be longer than this. And then you keep on doubling down. But if you don't address the actual root causes of the problem, you're never going to solve the problem. Taking away the superficial elements is not going to change the underlying problem. It's not going to go away because you ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I get why they're doing it, because it's much better for the evening news and easier to say, this is the problem and we're going to ban X. Like, it's much better optics-wise. You can put on the evening news, you're good. Yeah.
I mean, it's called clickbait for a reason. I mean, to run a bit with the analogy, you can't go and put a little note on your fish hook telling the fish that, listen, yeah, I know this is going to hurt you a bit and you're going to die, but you are going to feed my family for tonight. It's not going to work to get the fish to bite the hook. You need to put something there that draws, that he wants to eat, that he wants. So, and the media just runs with it. But that's what they need to do to make the money. To sell their product, they need to grab people's attention. And vague, massive, problematic concepts doesn't grab the attention like a scary looking gun or a system that they can change. And that's the other thing with capitalism is, in recent history, we have examples where a country has kicked the one system out for the other system in various different ways. And the media has managed to whitewash a lot of the bad things, especially like your heavy socialist and communist countries. They've managed to whitewash a lot of the horrors out of it. So you've got examples of, this country was capitalist, now it went over to communism. They kicked out the bad capitalism, and now they've got such good employment rates. And like in China, people like saying, but China's got such high employment rates. But I wonder if indentured servitude counts as employed. I mean, forced labor isn't exactly being employed. So you've got examples like that they can use and say, this system is bad, that system is good. And yes, we've got a lot of free access to information, but the problem is there's so much information that the people have access to, it becomes a near impossible task to get to the actual truth of a situation or the actual situation's construction, because there's just so much information out there and so many agents or so many elements putting their spin on certain information. And so it becomes a real muddled mess.
I was going to say, yeah, like just the thing, like you said, does indentured. I was like, yeah, dude, indentured servitude isn't really employed.
People do that, dude. I've actually, especially with China, which is currently still going on. Like, but China's got such a high employment rate. I'm like, okay, first off, the Chinese government is world renowned for being transparent and truthful. Secondly, being forced to work in a sweatshop for 1 cent an hour, I don't think that exactly qualifies as gainful employment, or being locked up in a work camp just because you happen to be Christian doesn't really qualify as employment, because China counts the people in the work camps as employed. They're in forced labor camps, but they're counted as employed. That's what they do. And the people just look at the stats like, oh, cool, they've got 99% employment. Well, no, they don't. They really don't.
No, that's, yeah. Wasn't it you who also pointed out at some point in another episode that, like, yeah, I mean, they lifted all these people out of, quote unquote, lifted all these people out of poverty in, was it Beijing and where else? It's like a couple of cities, right?
Mm.
What about the entire rest of that gigantic landmass? What's happening there?
I mean, it's so bad that in China they've got a one of the few public holidays they have is specifically for kids to go and visit their parents, their elderly parents, and because most of the elderly parents are stuck out in the countryside living off of a cup of rice a day, extreme poverty situation. So it's so bad that the government has to force you, on pain of imprisonment, you must go and visit your parents. And obviously with that, you take some money with them and supplies and whatnot. But the government actually has to force you to do it, because otherwise the burden on the social system, the elderly burden on the social system becomes too high in China, and it starts falling apart. And that's the kind of things it's there. The information is out there, freely available, but people just know. But you can also sort of understand it. How many people has the time to go through all the news sources and go and do all their own research just to see what their opinion is on a situation that's 7,000-8,000 kilometers away from them, that doesn't really directly impact them? People don't have that amount of time on their hands.
No, they don't.
So you can kind of understand why most people just look at your mainstream media sources for their information.
Hell, most people don't even have the time to research things that affect them. Do you know how many times my friends have asked me about X or Y? And I'm like, this would have been a 5-second Google search. Why are you making me explain it to you?
Yeah, that happens a lot. It's like a quick Google search and you can know what's going on, dude. What? Don't ask something if you can just Google it.
Like, I understand why in certain instances, like let's say if you wanted to understand more about quantum computing, why you would ask me directly.
Someone face to face to explain it to you, yeah.
But like a lot of the time, I would say easily 90% of the time, dude, like it's literally, and I'm getting to a point where I'm just going to be like, it's a Google search. I'm just going to say no, Google search it. Speaking of which, I guess my last topic for the day is that there are just too many messaging apps now. I have literally every single one. I have WhatsApp, I've had Viber, I've got Telegram, Signal, just name a message, and it's gotten to a point where, like, I mean, at least you're decent enough to message me on Telegram, unlike some people. But like, it's just it's gotten to a point where I've now decided that I'm just gonna say, you know what, screw it. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna delete these apps, and everyone else will just have to deal, because I'm done.
But this with the whole scare that everybody was in a panic with Google. A strange thing happened. Like I've got a certain group of people that I communicate with over Telegram, and then your plebs are still on WhatsApp, and then the one or two conspiracy theorists on Signal, and then your general just social chatting is on the Discord server. But it was very weird to me how I had got a split in my contacts between Telegram and WhatsApp and Signal, where it's separated out into these little groups. But yeah, no, I hear you. The messaging apps can become a handful after a while.
Yeah. So yeah,
but
that's me.
But which one do you prefer? Which platform do you prefer?
In my ideal world, I'd just stick to Telegram and Signal. In my ideal world.
Yeah, because I haven't used Signal that much because there's not hardly anyone I know uses Signal. But Telegram, I know Telegram is for me a much better app than WhatsApp. If you're going to look at the functionality of the app, and I'm not talking about security and that because I don't know jack shit about it, but just when you use it, what you can do with the app, the features that it has. Telegram is a much better app in my opinion than WhatsApp.
Oh yeah, it is. It's just, again, I keep telling people that the great gain of WhatsApp is that it is a story or a lesson in the value of being first to market and having market recognition.
Hmm.
That's it. That's what's keeping WhatsApp afloat. And because your granny or your mom or whatever just doesn't like the change and doesn't want to move to Telegram or whatever. Because honestly, like my family and all that, they still have like a family group on WhatsApp. I'm like, this is literally the only reason I have WhatsApp. That's it. That is the only.
Well, WhatsApp is also a bunch of groups.
It's like, this is. And I actually told my mom, like, I'm deleting it. And she's like, no, don't do that. Don't be like that to the family. I'm like, how about the family just make a Telegram group? There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, nothing stopping. You can do all the things you can do on WhatsApp, you can do on Telegram, and then a bit more. Oh,
Yeah.
and this is not a paid promotion by Telegram, just by the way.
No, it is not. But if it were
It could be.
if it were a paid promotion, if we are going to be mentioning paid promotion, seeing as we are now at the end of the show, I would like to mention our most generous show sponsor. Now, right now, it's pretty difficult to get a drink back home in South Africa. But if I were to be getting a drink, I would be going to JB's Pub. JB's Pub is the premier pub in Joburg. It's an invite-only pub. It's like Cheers or Friends or How I Met Your Mother, where all those cool places just happen. It's where you go to just have a good time. Just don't be adverse about it. That's it. That's the only rule there, and you'll have a great time. Now, JB's Pub has recently added some upgrades. I saw the videos myself. Shout out to our boy Ron, who's probably still suffering right now. But there's some swanky upgrades, and I guarantee you, when I next visit South Africa, I will be going straight to JB's Pub.
And it's also coincidentally the only way to get a hold of Ruan is to go to JB's Pub these days.
That is true. That is very true. Yeah. I think that's us for the week. Yeah. If you want to mention anything real quick, otherwise, let's play them out, Chief.
No, just go follow us on No Script Show on Twitter. I don't think we're anywhere else, but yeah, that's it.
That's it. Yeah, and I'm at WotanZA. I should actually, I guess technically it should be at WotanFL now for Florida, but that's the first point.
You're still in denial.
No, I'm not in denial at all. I'm a full-on Florida man now. Like the other day, did you know that it's legal here in Florida for restaurants to give you, like you have a doggy bag. They give you like doggy bags for your alcohol, so you can have like a sippy doggy bag to go cup, and you can just walk around in public sipping that. It's totally legal.
America, the only country that I know of where in some parts you're not allowed to sell alcohol, in the other parts you can walk around with a drink in your hand.
It's so Florida, bro. Like I was like, because we were leaving the one sports bar. It's like Mexican sports bar themed, and I was like, too bad about the drinks. They're like, no, don't worry about it. I got a to-go cup. It's literally like kids and college kids just walking around. Like, it's the most Florida. That, and the other day I saw a dude with corrugated iron, like shack iron strapped to his back while riding a motorbike, and that's just like a Wednesday in Florida. Like, it's just normal. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, when Cuba meets the first world.
Anyway. Right. Sweet. We'll see you next week, champs. And don't do anything I wouldn't do.
But that's not a whole lot.
I was gonna say, yes, it's true.
That's a very narrow range of taboos.
That's true.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.